Well, I guess the biggest question I had for you was what was the biggest challenge of being a local column writer, and how did Mike or yourself succeed in facing that challenge?
People can read humor about national politics or world events anywhere. You can read that from any number of writers, but I always try to hone in on what's funny about Columbus. And it's kind of strange. I came here in 1978, so I was already in my 20s. So it was all new. The place was all new to me, and I was able to look at it with new eyes. And I saw things that I thought were strange about Columbus that other people wouldn't notice because they lived here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so and the years go by, and then you start to lose that because you get kind of used to the place,
Right.
And I'm always trying to remind myself, okay, now let's take a step back here a minute. Look at this town from an outsider's view. What would be funny about it? And so I'm always still trying to do that, even though I'm like not an outsider anymore.
I wanted to read you a story from Mike Harden.
Yeah.
He wrote. It was dated back in '93. It's called "Reflections on an Average Sunrise," and it's basically this certain outlooks on several different people looking at a sunrise at 6:55 in the morning in Columbus. So I'll just go ahead and read from it. In pondering the celestial event that marked the end of her shift, the night duty nurse gazed upon something that one of her patients would never see again. Funny, the things we take for granted. The defendant saw it as the dawning of a day whose end would be marked by celebration or incarceration. The inmate saw it as day number 857. The optimist saw it as the beginning of a partly sunny day. The pessimist, the start of a partly cloudy day. The conclusion of the article is this. The sun rose on the 104th day of 1993, and no two people regarded it in precisely the same way. Some saw it as a chance to begin anew. Some looked at it, drew the blinds, and went back to sleep. Only the child marveled, wow. When I read this type of an article, I wonder, is anything off limits for a column writer? Because, stylistically, it's different than a news story. And, I've read several of your articles where you'll mention, language as being something to use with your style, and how easy it is to fall victim to diction that is more straightforward and less beautiful. So I guess I'm first of all, do you think this type of a story belongs in a newspaper, and why?
Oh, I think it belongs in a newspaper. Yeah, it's basically a reflection, but he's just making people stop and think. And sure, I think that's perfectly legitimate in a newspaper. I don't think there's enough of that in a newspaper, to tell you the truth. And he did it well. The thing about it is, that kind of thing done badly is just excruciating. Now, he was a master at doing it well, and that made all the difference. He could pull it off. He was confident that people would ride along with him while he set the scene, and just kind of took him where he was going. But he wasn't in a hurry in his writing. I'm in more of a hurry. I think because in the back of my head I have this fear that people are going to go read the comics. It's like maybe I'm worried I'm not good enough to pull that off. So I'm in more of a hurry. Let's get to the point here. But he could pull it off.
I wanted to go ahead and go from a story that you wrote, an article you wrote. It was recently after Mike's death. Mm-hmm. I believe it was the Sunday following his death. Okay. The obituary I wrote on for Thursday's paper. Mike died Wednesday of cancer. Mentioned that he loved to share what he knew about writing. I didn't have room to get specific, but I do now. So, as a tribute, I'd like to pass on some of his writing advice. I think he'd be pleased. He offered several tips to aspiring writers in a 1988 column. My favorite is this: never use a word in a story that you wouldn't use in a love letter. In other words, write the way people talk. They say rain, not precipitation. They walk into buildings, not facilities. Of course, in the interest of conveying information economically, journalists often have to resort to the stilted language of the news business, but you don't. You mentioned the business-like approach, and how that tends to take over for most people that want to pursue writing in newspapers. You explicitly say to journalists who often resort to the stilted language. So I guess I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that and why you chose to include that specific profession.
Newspaper writers do tend to be forced into using that kind of language, partly because, partly because sometimes it's editors insisting on it, and sometimes it's it's easier. You know, it's almost like there are certain stereotypical ways of expressing things, and you just kind of fall into that habit of doing it that way. Column writers really should be doing the polar opposite of that. I mean, they should never be doing that. So any column writer who's doing it, I would say, is not really writing a column, because especially in a column, reader picks up a column, they want to read your original expression. They want your original thoughts expressed in your quirky individual way. And so if you fall back into that language where you're using gubernatorial and precipitation and stuff, you're not giving that to them. And I know what I'm doing. It's in the afternoon, you're tired. It's like, oh, I'll just say it this way, And then, but I'll know what I've done, and I'll go back to that thing. No, I can't do it. I gotta say that better.
I know I heard it's probably a tough subject, but I just would like to know how would you describe your working and personal relationship with Mike Hardin?
Actually, I was the editor of the lifestyle section, which is the section he wrote for. So I was like his editor. And initially I was kind of intimidated by that, because I knew what a good writer he was, and I thought, gee, what business do I have editing? I still remember one of the first things I wrote was the movie Jurassic Park came out, and I did this humor column where I pretended to. It was like a celebrity profile of the Tyrannosaurus. I didn't know if it was going to work or not, but it was like early on. It was like the first month I was a columnist, but I still remember him saying he thought it was great. He told me he thought it was good, and I was just like, on the moon over that, because I thought, if I impressed Mike Hardin, that's just perfect. So we were very intentional about telling each other when we liked something we did. The thing about newspapers is everything moves so fast that nobody takes the time to compliment you very often. It's just like, okay, great, get the next one done, And so I tried to always tell him when I liked something he did, and he did the same for me, and that was good.